you want to talk about a true Arizona original who had a national and international impact. It was Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman ever to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. She has passed away.
At the age of 93 years old, John Hook has a look back at her life and legacy.
The woman who would one day sit on America's highest court began as a cowgirl. Born in El Paso on March 26, 1930, Sandra Day O'Connor grew up on her family's cattle ranch, the Lazy Bee, in Duncan, Arizona, in Green Lake County near the New Mexico border. Several years ago, she wrote a book about her childhood. Sandra Day, as she was known then, lived the Western life the rest of us see on TV or in the movies or read about in a book.
It was a large cattle ranch, and you had things to do every day, and every day it was something different. Sometimes it involved moving some cattle from point A to point B for a reason. You had to move them to a different water source, or you had reason to move the cattle from one pasture to another.
The rancher's daughter was a brilliant student who excelled in high school in El Paso and then later at Stanford University as an undergraduate and Stanford Law School, where she graduated third in her class in 1952. She married John J. O'Connor III that same year and was ready to dive into the legal world. Only no one would take her seriously because she was a woman.
I went looking, and there were maybe 40 notices on Stanford's bulletin board of law firms that said, Stanford Law graduates, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you about a job. I called every phone number on that list. Not a single firm would talk to me. I was a woman. They said, we don't hire women. I mean, I could not get an interview from that phone call.
She finally found work as a deputy county attorney in San Mateo, California. The O'Connors later moved to Phoenix, where they raised their 3 boys, Scott, Brian, and Jay. Sandra Day O'Connor became an assistant Arizona attorney general in 1965, and in 1969 was appointed to the Arizona State Senate when the state senator from her district resigned. She won election to the state senate in 1970 and again in 1972, becoming the first Republican majority leader, the first woman to hold that position anywhere in the country. In 1974, she left the state senate and became a Maricopa County Superior Court judge. 5 years later, Democratic Governor Bruce Babbitt appointed O'Connor to the Arizona Court of Appeals. And in 1981, Republican President Ronald Reagan nominated Sandra Day O'Connor to become the first woman justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. The Senate confirmed her unanimously. Ruth McGregor, who served as Chief Justice for the Arizona Supreme Court, was a law clerk for Sandra Day O'Connor during her first term in the United States Supreme Court.
Everything she did. They watched the kind of car she drove. They wanted to know the menu when she had people to their place for dinner. They wanted to know where she shopped. They watched every single part of her life. And so she was under constant scrutiny, and she was always gracious and always professional and always kind to people.
Justice O'Connor spent the next 24 years on the nation's high court. She came in with solid conservative credentials and carved out a role as a pragmatic jurist who decided each case on its merits.
I have 1 of 9 votes here. Sometimes I'm in the majority, sometimes I'm in the dissent. And I don't see my role as deciding all these things.
Professor Paul Bender of ASU's Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law argued a number of cases before Justice O'Connor in the high court.
I mean, if you had to pick somebody to be the first woman on the Supreme Court, it's hard to think of anybody who would have served that role any better than Justice O'Connor. She's well respected by everybody, all political stripes. She did a really good job on the court in terms of addressing issues in a sensible, pragmatic way.
To women attorneys, Justice O'Connor was a role model in the very best way.
I think that one of the things that I love about Sandra Day O'Connor is that she did what she thought was right. She wasn't necessarily married to politics when she was on the court. She made the decision that she thought was the right decision. And I think that's what our judiciary should do.
On the high court, Justice O'Connor confronted many weighty issues, including abortion rights, affirmative action, and the Bush versus Gore case, which allowed George W. Bush to become president after the disputed election of 2000.
Are there any specific cases where you're looking back, you wish you kind of had gone the other way?
Oh, probably, but I wouldn't know what. And if I did, I don't think I'd want to talk about it.
Okay. Do you have any regrets that the court took the Bush versus Gore case?
Well, I think the court had to. The nation had voted, and there were just major disputes being urged about improper counting of the votes and what have you. I think the public has a right to know if the voting process was adequate to count. Was that all right? Was that lawful? That's a fair question to ask.
And do you think you made the right call in that case?
Well, I hope so.
Justice O'Connor retired from the High Court in 2006 to take care of her ailing husband, John, suffering from Alzheimer's disease. He died in 2009. After she left the court, she stayed active, writing and speaking, serving the public. ASU named its law school after her, and she spent time there inspiring thousands of students. The dean of ASU, Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, says her legacy is clear.
She is the most important woman in the history of the United States. That's true today, and I think that's going to be true for a very long period of time, and that's quite a legacy.
The O'Connors' old home in Paradise Valley, the O'Connor House, was taken apart and reassembled in Papago Park in Tempe. It's a place for leaders with different viewpoints to meet, to find common ground. A living monument to her life and work. In downtown Phoenix stands the Sandra Day O'Connor Federal Courthouse, a fitting tribute for a life lived with the highest distinction. A journey that began so many years ago on the Lazy Bee Ranch in Duncan, Arizona. John Hook, Fox 10 News.
Is there a more Arizona story
wow.
than that? I mean, being born on a ranch and reaching the the highest levels of power in the world. And there's the Sandra Day O'Connor Courthouse. And one thing that really hit me with that, one lifetime ago, she just passes away. She graduates Stanford Law, one of the most prestigious law schools in the world, calls 40 different law firms, and nobody would take her call because she was a woman.
Yes, exactly. What a legend and a trailblazer in her own right. And so many parts of her life now live on through, of course, the courthouse that you're looking at here, the Sandra Day O'Connor School of Law at Arizona State University, now downtown Phoenix. And wow. We remember her and we honor her legacy here today because she definitely made a difference here, not just in Arizona, but across the nation.